I don't think the analyst is going to be replaced, because at the end of the day, there still needs to be a human element to the interpretation of the data and things like that. But also, a commander doesn't have the time to sit behind a computer and start prompting AI and be like, "Where's the bad guys?" Yes,
Yeah.
And then you've got to read through all this reporting. You've got to send someone to put that together for them and give them a brief. So.
Welcome back to Insightful Inquiries. This month we are rejoined by Cole, a veteran of the New Zealand military where he served as an intelligence analyst. Cole has deployed multiple times to the Middle East, working in various roles as an intelligence professional. After leaving the military, Cole began to work in the government sector as an intelligence professional. Outside of that work, he started the Instagram account allcon.intel, which offers insights into the Indo-Pacific region. If you are interested in events in the Indo-Pacific, follow Cole's Substack, where he discusses the most important events in that region. We are so happy to have Cole back on the podcast.
My bulky blender was such a pain to use, I ended up hardly ever using it at all. But the BlendJet 2 portable blender makes blending so easy and convenient, I use it just about every day. BlendJet 2 is portable, so you can blend up a smoothie at work, a protein shake at the gym, or even a margarita on the beach. It's small enough to fit in a cup holder, but powerful enough to blast through tough ingredients like ice and frozen fruit with ease. BlendJet 2 is whisper quiet, so you can make your morning smoothie without waking up the whole house. It lasts for 15 plus blends and recharges quickly via a USB-C cord. Best of all, BlendJet 2 cleans itself. Just blend water with a drop of soap and you're good to go. With over 30 plus colors and patterns to choose from, there's a BlendJet 2 to complement just about any style. I absolutely love the Lisa Frank edition. What are you waiting for? Go to blendjet.com and grab yours today. And be sure to use the promo code Analytics12 to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. No other portable blender on the market comes close to the quality, power, and innovation of BlendJet 2. They guarantee you'll love it or your money back. Blend anytime, anywhere with the BlendJet 2 portable blender. Go to blendjet.com and use the code Analytics12 to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. Shop today and get the best deal ever.
All right. Welcome, Cole, back to the podcast from allcon.intel. Cole, welcome back.
Hey, Kevin. How's it going? I'm happy to be here again. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, it's always good, through whether it's Instagram or through the podcast and stuff.
Yeah.
I just love bouncing ideas off of you, and I think we have similar personalities, so we kind of see things through the same lens.
Yeah, and it's been a while as well, so I'm sure we've got a few ideas to bounce around on this chat too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I know what piqued my interest the most was you started talking about using AI as an intel analyst. So I know I want to get into that, but first I just want to get into, it's been a while. So what have you been up to?
Yeah, so for anyone that's listening to me for the first time, so my name's Cole. I run what first started as a simple social media platform. Started as Allcon S2, and that's kind of evolved into Allcon Intel, and I've kind of migrated to other platforms. So in that respect, what I try to do is bring like geopolitics and current events to the forefront of the public, and also offer insight to what's happening in the world and kind of just simplify things so things are more digestible and understandable. Since then, I've now launched my own agency, which is kind of combines intelligence and content, smushes them together and provides that as a service. Aside from, and I also got the newsletter and like Substack newsletter podcast going on and all that other good stuff. So yeah, been pretty busy.
Yeah, are you thinking of sticking with Substack? Do you like that as a platform for the newsletter?
Yeah, I think the only reason, so what I did with the newsletter, so I started on Substack and then I built my website, and then I changed over to a different service where I had full control of the newsletter game. But because I'm quite time poor, I don't have the time to spend to optimize it and spend big money on these other platforms to do that for me.
Right.
So I went back to Substack, and I already had an audience there that was kind of committed to Substack, and that's what they're used to. And ultimately, I think Substack is a great platform to grow on and to write. And also, if you go down the paid subscriber route, there's also that, and that's all taken care of. They just collect a small fee. But, for the most part, it's free and it works. It's got a good reputation and it's only growing. The platform's getting bigger. So I think it's a good opportunity to just stay with Substack.
Yeah, I see that, and I'm doing mine through Beehive, and this is no, oh, you should do this over this. This isn't that's not here the conversation that we're trying to have here.
Yeah.
I look at it as, and I've been hearing a lot of conversations right now about owning your content. And even with, I'm doing it through Beehive, you're doing it through Substack. And so even with those, we really don't own our content. And so I've just been thinking about what is the future for us? Because we are in a field where we can definitely get shut down very quickly.
Yeah.
Because of the types of things that we're trying to broadcast, the types of things we're trying to bring to the forefront. You look at Popular Front, if you know that Instagram account. And Instagram has shut them down multiple times because of the content that they're sharing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I absolutely agree, and that's something I'm always quite cognizant of, and that's the first reason why I started a website, because with the website, at least I own it, and it's very hard to shut that down. But, when you're operating on things like Instagram, Twitter, or now X, and even Substack, there's always that risk if you get a bit too controversial, or if you go down certain narratives, then, they're going to pretty much throw the book at you. And the thing with Substack as well, I think at the moment it's quite free and open, but once it gets to the point, or if it does get to the point where they start, really stomping down on what people write about and things like that, then I'd probably start looking to go back to my own service. But for the most part, it's easy, so I stick to Substack.
Yeah. I know, I've heard a lot of great things about Substack. I do really like the theory behind it. It's kind of like a blog.
Yeah.
And you have that, like you said, there's like the subscriber portion where you can have it behind a paywall, and people pay in order to see that kind of content. So I really like that aspect of it. I think I don't think we had this discussion at all the last time, and the last time you were on, I'm pretty sure Elon Musk did not take over Twitter at that point.
No, I don't think so, yeah.
Yeah, so back before then, so we're talking 2022, for me, Twitter, which is now X, was like this great open source intelligence platform because of the way that humans interacted on it. And I will give my current analysis of the situation, but I'd love to hear what you've seen going on X right now. Because what I have seen is it has kind of devolved away from this sort of open source intelligence platform, especially with what Musk is trying to do, which is, not show a lot. So unless you're a paid subscriber to X, you can't really go into like the API and kind of do those kind of open source things. And so I'm noticing it's just a bunch of just people bickering back and forth. I'll see a lot of that. And there's an increase of these like grifters with, hundreds of thousands. I mean, I see a post by someone that's so wildly inaccurate, and they've got 500,000 followers of people that just love to do them. Like, this is proven inaccurate, half the stuff that this person's saying. So that's what I have seen on it. And maybe hopefully you've gotten a different direction, and then offline we can kind of talk about how I can correct myself.
So Twitter's interesting, and I absolutely agree. It's certainly changed. I'm not sure if it's for the better either. And from an intelligence standpoint, if you're talking about like open source collection, used to be a great platform, especially when you're able to leverage the API and just doing Twitter scrapes. I'm sure you would have done it back in your past, or you had analysts who did do it. For example, at the height of ISIS, Twitter was an absolute goldmine for things. You could paint a pretty good intelligence picture purely based off social media. But that's moved away now. And now, as you said, I think it's a platform for a lot of narratives and opinions rather than, genuine, say, some really good impartial facts and things like that. And there's certainly a lot of grifters. And I see a lot of people who own, or they've got a business, or they're just trying to sell you something, and they'll just make these threads upon threads upon threads. And they've got thousands of followers, and it's just a platform for them to push their product. And a lot of the time, the product, I've noticed personally, it's like they're gurus, you know,
Right.
Yeah. How to
yeah.
make a 30-day millionaire,
Yeah.
Is this
And
what
a
we've
lot,
come to? Yeah.
a lot of like, here's how I use AI to leverage,
Yeah.
my marketing strategy. And it's a 15 tweet thread about how I'm doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And those, a lot of people have made these small AI tools, very niche ones, and then that's their software as a service, and they'll just pump that through X, and they get traction. But I'm not sure that is the platform. Even though I'm like semi-present on it, I don't really use it anymore. There are still a few good people on there. There's a lot of academics, especially in New Zealand, that still use it, and they've got some really good insights. But for the most part, I don't think it's the platform of choice for the kind of stuff we do.
Yeah, and so, like I said, I agree with that. And I was, when Musk took over, I kind of made fun of the people saying Twitter's dead and he's going to kill it. And I was of the opinion that let's just let it play out. Let's see what happens. But it's kind of like, I think there's too much change too quickly and trying to test out what works and what doesn't. That's something that should be tested on the development side, not broadcasted to the entire, 300-something million or whatever it is that are on Twitter. Yeah.
And even the branding. So I'm not a billionaire mogul or anything like that. So I'm just a simple dude. But to get rid of, years of brand equity in Twitter, and then overnight, boom, it's X, like this dark logo with a cross. It's just, it doesn't make sense. And even that, like people that'll turn people away. Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. It's a weird space at the moment.
Yeah, and it's this move towards, I think, a minimalist branding. So in the U.S. we have, professional football or American football as we call it, and we've got the National Football League. But The Rock bought the XFL from and I can't remember the guy's name, the owner of the WWE. So they went bankrupt and The Rock bought it, and he completely rebranded it. It was all minimalist. So it's basically the same. That black and white X is the same thing for the XFL. And it's just, I don't know what's going on. It's just these companies are moving to that. But even with, what's that?
Is XFL like a tier 2 competition?
Yeah, it's definitely tier 2. And there's two of them now. There's the USFL and the XFL, and they're a tier below the NFL. And then you've got college, which is their amateur level.
Yep.
But even talking about, you brought up such a great point, the rebranding of something that was an institution around the world. And yet now, not only are you rebranding because it was Twitter and now it's X, but you have tweets. Yeah. And now they're posts.
Yeah.
I think no one knows.
Yeah.
Retweets are now maybe reposts. And then just the likes alike, right? But that's a complete overhaul of something that worked.
Yeah, exactly. And when a brand becomes part of everyday vocabulary, as Twitter did, tweets like, oh, just let me send a tweet or check out this tweet. You just overnight you just cut that away. Yeah, it's such a weird move. Obviously, he's got a plan bigger than me, in my opinions. But I don't know if it was the right one.
It's like every social media platform is a post, right? Instagram, you create a post. Facebook, you create a post. Twitter even LinkedIn is a post.
Yeah.
But Twitter was a tweet, and we're tweeting. And did you see that tweet?
Yeah.
So it kind of, pushed itself away from all the other. That's what made it unique and popular, was that it wasn't what all the other social media platforms were.
Yeah. exactly. And did hashtags, did they kind of originate on Twitter as well? Or was that
I
like
think
more of it?
so.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that is, I'm sure somebody listening could correct us, but I really believe that that's where that started as a way
Right.
to really kind of get all that information into one little section so that everybody can see it. It's not just blasted all over the place.
Yeah. But yeah, Twitter or X, it's a really strange space, you know, even in terms of engagement. If you look at like the likes, the comments, things like that, and replies, I always feel like that those are quite low, and like the actual metric that people really care about now is just the impressions or the reach that you
Yeah,
get. Yeah, like look how many people saw it, but no one really engaged with it, just saw it.
right.
Whereas on other platforms like Instagram and things like that, then your engagement and people actually interacting with the content is a lot higher.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
I don't really. I don't. Oh, you go. You go.
all I was going to say was that all that Elon did there was just put the impressions, and we as a number-based system, as humans, were like, no likes, no retweets, no tweets, no comments on it, but 22,000 impressions, and you can see that, and you're like, oh, look what I did, and so you see that large number, and it just, I guess, gets people to go, yeah, I love this. I've got 22,000 impressions here. What does that mean? I don't know, but I got it, and it's a large number to me.
Yeah. Yeah. But from my perspective, and the thing I really enjoy about social media and always have is just the engagement part and the opportunity to meet people like to yourselves, like we met through social media.
Yep.
And lots of opportunity there. But when you're just looking at impressions or someone's scrolled through your content and that engagement doesn't happen, I think it's a missed opportunity.
Oh, it definitely is, and the people that are doing that are the ones that are just looking for the impressions. They are the ones that you were just talking about, the gurus, the money marketing, and here's how I made $30 million in 2 weeks or whatever it is. They don't care. They don't want the engagement. I think that's unique in what you and I have done with dozens of other accounts that now we've interacted with. I have personally, I've gone out and met in person some of the people that I can. I know we've talked. If I'm in New Zealand, I'm heading right over to you.
Absolutely.
As soon as I get there. And I think that might be unique for the intelligence community.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I'm most thankful about after starting my own platform, was kind of just tapping into that pool of intelligence analysts. Granted, a lot of people aren't. Some of them, I think, are probably just college kids or high school kids just working around. But there are some really genuine people out there who are actually in the business. And to be able to unlock that through social media, it's an awesome thing that a lot of people weren't really aware of, and especially in New Zealand. So, going back, I think I was the first one to start something like what I did with the All Contest 2, to the point where I ended up giving a presentation to the New Zealand Institute of Intelligence Professionals, just to talk about the things that I kind of unlocked through Allcon, and then engaging with the wider intelligence community through social media, which traditionally you're kind of restricted channels, whatever you've got on the side and things like that.
Yeah, and we need, as intel analysts, we need each other. This is the career field, is bouncing ideas off of each other and saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Can you kind of give me another set of eyes? And then you do that, like multi-source reporting, where some of the best stuff is talking to another analyst and having them disagree and play devil's advocate with you. And there's some of the accounts on social media that will do that you'll make a post and it's not the kind of person that just sees something and automatically says, yeah, that's, I think just put a post about Zelensky firing a few people for corruption. And a lot of the comments are, well, he's corrupt. And, all of this, like, well, does he think he's not corrupt? And it's like, that's not the point. The point isn't, two things can be true at the same time. This is what's being reported on, and here's the analysis of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What an intel analyst would do is, as you know, we'll talk through all of those points and kind of what we always do is ask the questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how, and that why is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Intelligence aside, what's your view on things like collaborating on social media when it comes to your personal brand or the brand of Oakland Analytics? What's your view on collabing? So if someone came to you and wanted to collaborate on the post, and then their post and templates ends up being on your feed, and it's tied to your brand, what's your view? Are you into that, or do you take more of a due diligence approach?
So the due diligence I try to do, I'm not always. It's not always effective, and sometimes I'm not accurate in it. But the first thing is understanding who that brand is. So if I'm going to associate my brand with that brand, due diligence is the most important thing to do. And all that is just finding out who they are, what they do, things that they have posted in the past, and kind of just finding those things, checking their background, their work history. To me, that's the most important thing. As like just for me and my branding, if there's a different brand on my social media post, I have no problem with that. I don't have a problem if theirs pops up. You know how they have both. You'll see. Let's say you and I collabed, and if it said Alcon Intel first, and then Oakland Analytics, I have no problem with that. I'm just worried about if I associate myself and then subsequently my brand, that's going to be an issue in the future when people are going to go, can I respect this person? Can I trust this person? We'll look at their associates. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm the same. So prior to moving Alcon into a brand, firstly it was just an outlet or a platform for me to share information. So I was kind of a bit more loose with that kind of stuff. But now, if you're going to have a brand, behind a brand is credibility, right? And especially in the intelligence community, credibility is everything, regardless of whether you're in the IC plugged in as an analyst or you're starting your own private brand. That is still kind of plugged into the intelligence side of the house, but you still need that credibility behind you. And if you're going to be tied to some of these accounts where you don't know who's behind them, or every so often they might put out some quite controversial or even incorrect things, you don't really want a brand tied to that, which is ultimately going to harm your credibility. But then, if working with someone like yourself, like ultra credible, fully out there, no issues whatsoever, don't care about the imaging, don't care about the, what it all looks like. Yeah, but because I get a lot of requests, and that's why I ask.
Everyone wants to collab with the big man.
Yeah, and I always shut a few down. So, but I feel bad. But
I mean, you have to, and it goes to your personal integrity, and what you're trying to do. Now, what do you think about this? Okay, and I think you kind of mentioned this when you asked the question, which was taking away even the intel aspect of it. So just as a brand, you collabing for like an advertisement. What are your thoughts on that for your brand personally?
Yeah, so for my brand, because I firmly believe nowadays having an online presence is important for reach, for potential clientele, even to have an audience is really important. There's no two ways about it, unless you've got some good connections inside the community, which you can just leverage and do that. But if you're going to partner with marketing agencies, you'd hope that that agency has an idea of what you're about and what you do. And that's kind of why I'm starting my own brand. I'm not a marketing agency by any means, but I can work with similar brands to myself who might want to increase their reach, increase their audience, and I can help with that with good, solid content. And because I understand what they're doing and I can provide insight, I can provide assessment on things that are happening around the world. That's backed by analysis. Some of the analysis might just be first line, but at least it's not just an opinion. It's just getting thrown out there. It's just considered stuff. That's good quality. So yeah, no issues with the marketing and sales side of the house. I just would hope that people are working with other people that get what they're about, because intelligence and explaining it can be really hit and miss, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely it's so unique, it's so niche
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and I have not gone up to any marketing person and tried to have them understand it,
Yeah.
which is why we haven't put out advertisements. We have an ad on our podcast for, the BlendJet or whatever. So I've accepted that because I've used the product.
Yeah.
But I've had others reach out that I won't because
Yeah.
I don't have the product or it just doesn't match
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do. But trying to explain that to a marketing agent is quite difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So like, I think the product, advertising products through a podcast or even like your own newsletter, I think that's okay. Personally, for me, if I was going to choose a product to advertise, I would hope that a company that's in the Intel game would come to me and be like, hey, can you advertise our ozone aggregator kind of thing? Or someone, in a dreamland be like, Palantir comes to you and be like, hey, can you be affiliate for Palantir? I'd be like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no issues there.
Yeah, because that would be trying to think of what companies would be similar that you could collab with for an advertisement. Yeah, Palantir would be the top level.
Yeah.
We could do Lockheed Martin or Boeing.
Yeah, but that's what I think. Like brands like yourself, and there's so many out there. What's another one? Grey Dynamics. These really niche, small private intelligence agencies, even leveraging each other. Like, hey, this podcast is brought to you by Grey Dynamics XYZ. This podcast is brought to you by Oakland Analytics. Blah blah. It's all about that community and just sharing the love.
And so exactly, and that is what I love so much about what has happened here is the community that it's brought together, and it's not a competition, right? If this were, I don't know, music or something else, in bands, we would probably have some rivalry there.
Yeah.
As you're bigger than we are, and we want to try to get over you. And in the Intel community, what I've seen on social media is, hey, I see what you're doing. It's so good. Here's what I've been doing. Let's have some conversations. Let's bounce questions off of each other. And there's no competition that I have seen. There is no one that's going, I don't go, how am I going to make Oakland Analytics account better than Alcon.Intel? I don't think that way. It's just like we're doing two, I would say not completely different things, but we're doing different things on the same page, and we're successful in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And intelligence is just that umbrella, right? And we all kind of feed into that. And we're all in the intelligence niche, but we're also further niche down into our own areas of expertise or what we provide. But at the end of the day, if you're talking about social media and even wider than that, it's not a zero-sum game. It's all about sharing. It's all about community. And I personally think, outside of the actual IC, if you're talking about the social intelligence community, it's more of a community than you might find in the IC. It's very siloed sometimes in the actual IC. So yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. It's just been a crazy ride. I think it's a good time to kind of transfer over to discussing artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And I really would love to get not too much into the weeds where you're giving out proprietary information or anything like that, but just talking about, what you've been doing with leveraging AI in order to make it an intelligence analyst, or is that what you were trying to do? Well, I'll shut up now and just let you go.
Yeah. So I guess as everyone is well aware, AI is the flavor of the month, so to speak. And a big part of that, when you mention AI, people think ChatGPT straight away.
Right.
So when that burst onto the scene, I kind of came across it start of the year. I'm not sure if I was late to the game. And firstly, I'll just caveat that I'm not a data scientist. I'm not a data engineer. I don't work with AI. I don't have that kind of background. I'm an Intel analyst. That's what I'm trained to do, and that's what I do. So, going back to the AI thing, I noticed that, as everyone does start playing with it, start doing some cool things. And by nature of what I do and how time poor I was like, okay, well, can I leverage this to speed up my own process? Has anyone started to leverage this to create an Intel analyst, or at least use it to provide insights and assessments, or even just collect information? So those are the questions I asked myself, and that was the intent. So I started off with just ChatGPT, just as a normal platform, and started using that through prompts to try and build a simple intelligence report with an assessment. Iteration 1, you've had to feed it bits of information, and it was fine at producing a simple report, like outlining the facts in a logical way. You could give it the structure of a report, which is cool. But then it struggled when you got to the analysis part and putting in an assessment. And, if you try to tell it to provide a 6-month outlook, it would pretty much go, no, I'm not trained to do that. I can't do that. So I'd have to go do the roundabout way and be like, okay, provide me a hypothetical scenario where blah, blah, blah,
yeah.
blah. Yeah. And so it'd come up with some pretty, you could say it was a credible assessment. Some of it was pretty far reaching, but at the same time, I've seen some similar assessments by some pretty reputable people out there. And the focus was always on the China-Taiwan situation. And, one of the funny things it did when I first noticed it was one of the assessments that it made was the chance of a miscalculation in the Taiwan Strait between the West and China, which a lot of think tanks, a lot of analysts out there, that's what they predict the most likely to be, including myself. Right. Yeah, if we're talking about kinetic conflict. So I was actually pretty surprised there. And so I moved on from there, and we'll stick with ChatGPT for now. And I was like, okay, well, and then ChatGPT GPT-4 came out with the ability to utilize plugins, which was another cool thing. But I'll stop there. Do you have any questions so far?
Yeah. So I guess my main question would be, from the China-Taiwan assessment, do you think that it's because it's just artificial intelligence, so it's only coming from a logical basis, and that is how you and I, that's how the intelligence community works, is through a logical, we take everything and then we make a logical conclusion. Do you think that's why it made that same assessment?
Yeah, and because, in the case of OpenAI or ChatGPT, it's only trained up until 2021, so that's right. Unless you give it more relevant and more recent information, which I was doing. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's just the logical deductions based on what it knows and what you've given it. But the thing that I really wanted to see it do, and I don't think it's possible with the front end of ChatGPT, is actually see the analysis behind the assessment, which is important. If you were to go ahead and use that, and then someone was to question and be like, "Hey, how'd you get to this?" We can't be like, "Oh, I just asked ChatGPT." Yeah. Or if you did say that, yeah. Or if you did,
credibility lost.
Yeah. You'd be like, "Oh, well, I leveraged ChatGPT, and this is the analysis behind it." And they can go, "Oh, fuck, okay." Well, but
right.
Well, we don't actually have that at the moment, or not at least that I've seen. But I certainly think it is the logical aspect of it that led to the deductions. And I've actually given it analysis of competing hypotheses to do, and it's able to come out with hypothetical scenarios using that technique. But again, you don't see the working behind it,
right?
Or you see
you
some
have
working.
To trust it.
Yeah, you see some working, but you don't. It's not deep, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah. So then GPT-4 comes out. You start using plugins. What are you doing with that?
Yeah. So this is really interesting. So if you get a subscription to GPT-4, you get access to plugins, and plugins are things that are made by people, and they do a specific thing. So, for example, you might get a PDF reader plugin, which you can activate and put a link in for a PDF, and it'll go out, analyze the PDF, and then you can ask questions about that PDF, and it's great. There's another one that'll scrape a bunch of different news sources for most recent news. There's one that scrapes Substack. There's one that pulls academic journals. There's all sorts of things. So I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. So I thought about the intelligence cycle rather than just focusing on the analysis and producing a report. I wanted to go back further and do the collection, and leveraging the plugins. You've certainly got that ability to do, at least online. So I used the news. I think it was called World News was the plugin, as well as just a normal link reader. And you're able to combine those to be like, okay, find me the most recent articles on China-Taiwan situation, and then tell it, link reader, visit these articles and provide me an analysis based on those articles. And, for the most part, it provides a pretty good start point if you're doing some exploration. I wouldn't use it as the be-all and end-all, but if that's part of your process, just to go read the news and scrape some news outlets, I think it's great in that respect. It certainly sped up a lot of my work, just that part. But then there is a need to go deeper if you want to do more considered research. So for the collection aspect, using the plugins, it was really good. And then from there, going down to the analysis piece, it still ran into the same problem. Except I think GPT-4 was interesting. You could actually ask it to come up with an assessment. And there would be less roadblocks. I can't say that the assessments are always accurate or they're very value adding, but it's an assessment nonetheless. It's a predictive assessment. It's given it a shot, right? Yeah,
right.
Really interesting.
Yeah, and I think everyone, I'll stick with that. Everyone, it has some sort of fear that AI is going to take over all of the jobs, and then subsequently, after all the jobs are taken, there's the wild conspiracies of future like Terminator and Skynet and things like that. But I'd like to get your assessment on currently where we stand with AI, with ChatGPT, Bard with Google, all of those things. On, is it taking away the analyst job, or is it improving the abilities of the analyst, or is it the opposite of that? Is it taking away from the ability of the analyst because it could be giving out some improper information?
So at the moment, I look at it as efficiency gains, speeding up the workflow, using it, leveraging AI to provide, I'm not going to say start points, but at least provide ideas. If you've got access to plugins, then that's cool. But I think the real value comes in the integration of AI into traditional intelligence platforms. So unfortunately, I don't have access to Palantir these days. So I'm not plugged into the national security game with defense. But I saw things about AI integration into Palantir. So if you've got this, if you're utilizing Palantir and you've got your suppository of reporting, you got, I don't know, 5i reporting, Stone Ghost, whatever, and you're able to get that and leverage AI and ask AI questions about that reporting and ask it to analyze and find trends in that, then that's gold. Because I've used front-facing public data from different agencies in New Zealand, and I've been like, hey, can you analyze these numbers for trends? Can you analyze this information for trends? And it's been really, really good in that respect. So if you're able to do that with actual intelligence and the work you're doing, that will speed up the process. So just say you had 100 odd reports and you asked your Palantir, okay, provide me all the instances where so-and-so is mentioned and where he's been moving for the last 24 days. I'm pretty sure that you'd be able to be like, okay, based on what we've read, this is where he's been. This is his pattern of life. You don't have to do it. We've done it for you.
Right.
Yeah. I certainly see that. If it's not happening already, I'm certainly see that that's the future.
Yeah, I know that there has been some discussion of using it within like imagery.
Yeah.
And just saying, hey, how many tanks are within a 10-mile radius of a certain location?
Yep.
And what we found, or what was found during sort of the initial testing, was that it would get things wrong.
Yeah.
It would be, 20 tanks in this area, and you take an analyst and they look at it and they do the actual counting, bean counting is what we would call it.
Yeah.
and you go, well, no, there's only 6. Well, what did it say 10? You go back to it and you say, well, this tree trunk looked like a turret. So it kind of did that. And then, oh, well, the backside of this house looked like the backside of whatever tank you were looking, or any kind of tank.
Yeah.
And so I had that same assessment where it wasn't going, at least now and within the next 2 decades, I don't see it taking the jobs away. I just see it as an improvement to what an analyst can do. Because like you just said, now you're time poor as an analyst all the time because you're always having to read everything and look at everything. And now you have a buddy there that can do all of that for you within seconds and improve kind of those tedious menial tasks that we have as analysts.
Yeah. And, if we look at it in a military context, right, even if AI gets to the point where it's doing really good analysis and it's providing some really good insights and trends, I don't think the analyst is going to be replaced, because at the end of the day, there still needs to be a human element to the interpretation of the data and things like that. But also, a commander doesn't have the time to sit behind a computer and start prompting AI and be like, where's the bad guys? And then you've got to read through all this reporting. You've got to send someone to put that together for them and give them a brief. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And whenever you were talking to me, offline about how you're leveraging AI maybe as an intelligence analyst, that it was my exact thought was, as an intelligence analyst, the number one thing you do is disseminate that to the commander, right?
Yeah.
And so, have you tried to do that with AI? Hey, role play as an intelligence analyst and brief the commander on whatever the situation is.
No, I haven't actually done that. I think that's a pretty interesting idea. I think the only reason I haven't done it is because that's not what I do these days.
Right.
But I think that would be interesting. I know in my day job, or at least across the New Zealand government, there's a lot of guidance coming out now about the use of large language models. There's a lot of privacy issues and things like that, and it's the Wild West at the moment. Like, you just access it, you pretty much copy paste if you're using an unrestricted system. You'll copy paste potentially sensitive data into these language models. So it's quite touchy.
Yeah, and even people may be thinking, well, do you have an AI system on a classified device? And I know that they're working on doing that, on pulling the large language modeling system, pulling that, and then putting it onto a classified device. And the way that works is you cut it off from the unclassed device, and then you sort of update its algorithms and stuff through the classified device. So there's no spillage or anything like that.
Yeah.
But even on the unclassed portion, the unclassified portion, if you're just at your home, you could run into documents within your office that, it's not highly classified, but it is proprietary information for the government, or it's official use only, or CUI, as we call it now, that it doesn't need to be put out there. Things like medical records of military personnel. That's not classified, but it kind of is, because you should not be putting that stuff out there. So seeing maybe an analyst, unfortunately, putting that information into Chat GPT or any one of the language models could definitely be, it could ruin an entire government, maybe, because that information gets out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be quite sensitive, and because, as I said, it's the Wild West, and I think only now, at least in New Zealand, we're starting to kind of pay attention to it. But in terms of going back to my own experiments and projects with it, so I moved on from ChatGPT and the front end, and I got hold of what's called AutoGPT. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it. I've not used it.
Yeah, so I started playing with that. Took a while to get set up. I'm not a very technical person when it comes to back end work, but I got it set up anyway. I'll read what it is, because explains it better than I can. So AutoGPT
Awesome.
is an AI agent that, given a goal in natural language, will attempt to achieve it by breaking it into subtasks and using the internet and other tools in an automatic loop. And so essentially what that is, from my experience, is each time you use it, it creates its own like mini language bot, I suppose. And I'll be like, okay, you are now an intelligence analyst. You're focused on geopolitical issues in the Southwest Pacific. I need you to train yourself on all the emerging issues across the Southwest Pacific and provide me a 24-month assessment, strategic assessment. And so you give it that, and it'll just create tasks after task after task and start training itself. And it gets to the point where, okay, it starts accessing the internet and things like that, runs into a roadblock, and then it'll start generating Python code and creating its own Python scripts to start solving that task. And be like, okay, so I've done that, I've got a Python script here, I'm going to run that, boom. Okay, I've just scraped all this information, all these websites for information. Okay, now I need to analyze it. So now I'm going to create a Python script that allows me to run an analytical technique over this information. And then it'll just keep going. I think it's still quite experimental in that respect. For the likes of intelligence analysts, the request is quite complex. And so it gets to the point where it'll start creating so many Python scripts, it'll start noticing errors in the code that it's writing. So it'll get into this weird feedback loop where it just ends up just fixing itself over and over again to create like the perfect model. And because it leverages the OpenAI API, which you have to pay for, it starts wasting credits on it. So it's just okay. But that's kind of where I got to in terms of developing it. So I certainly have to research more into being able to make my own language model. And that's something that I'm doing in my spare time, because I think if you're just using the front end of ChatGPT, yeah, sure, it's good. There is value in it, but to get to the nuts and bolts of it and to actually provide something of value, you have to get into these more complex systems.
Yeah, you definitely can't let AI do the analysis for you.
Yeah.
I think it's just what you spoke about, being time poor and just saying, a summary of 22,000 words is really good for an analyst to get his hands on.
Yeah.
Just kind of break down what's important, because there's a lot of fluff in that kind of stuff. But I also think what you've described is something that maybe scares a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because you're getting into machine learning.
Yeah.
And having the artificial intelligence device fixing itself.
Yeah.
Just like a human would. I mean, that's how you would teach yourself to play chess, right? Trial and error. And you'd get into, an error made in a game, and then you'd go and study that and fix it. And it is doing it way faster than we can.
Yeah.
So do you see any future problems with that? Or do you just see it as, hey, as some scientists would say, I don't think this can become sentient. So there's really there's no issue in doing that kind of stuff.
Honestly, based on what I saw through AutoGPT, and again, I don't have a background in AI or machine learning or anything like that, but I certainly see a possibility where, it's that could happen, where I'm not going to say it becomes sentient, but it gets to the point where it becomes so efficient and it starts becoming so aware of its own shortfalls. It'll probably start becoming aware of the human shortfall and start addressing that through the machine. I'll be like, okay, I see that as a possibility. And I've talked about this with a friend, and we spoke about, okay, well, there's these governments, the US government, the Chinese government, right, spending billions, no doubt billions, on AI machine learning.
Yeah.
Surely in the depths of some government lab that this is already happening. It's just very controlled.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's no doubt that if we're using it, I could consider myself a simpleton. I'm not that much in, I'm not in the CIA. I'm not in any intelligence community anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't have an aspect on a highly classified side of what those personnel are doing. And I would be very surprised if they weren't doing something similar. And I think the scariest thing is what you brought up about, it's the AI is fixing itself. and then it fixes itself, and then it goes to fix humans, or wants to fix the world that it's in. And I've heard this brought up a lot of times, that if AI decides to fix the world, the first thing it would go after is humans, because it would say, well, what's the main cause of a lot of the destruction going on right now? Well, it's humans. So what do we do with that? Well, you destroy all humans and everything will be fine.
Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah,
it's Terminator.
And those, it's Terminator. It's look, probably every dystopian book that's been written, every movie that's coming out now is all dealing with this kind of stuff. I saw one recently, and it was about human trafficking, or child trafficking, and they created an AI child to kind of manipulate these adults, so they can go out there and find the adult and arrest them. And what happens at the end of the movie. So I won't say the movie, so that it's not spoiler, because you don't even know what the movie is. But at the end, she becomes this AI little girl, becomes sentient, and starts to destroy the people that made her by posting who they are and posting things about them in order to get rid of them. And then she has taken over the full aspect of that program, and now she can go without any handcuffs, can go out there and just do whatever, killing these individuals or whatever she needed to do. I think that's a very scary thought when we're talking about, maybe 10, 20 years down the line.
But I mean, a lot of the scariness, not even talking about AI taking over, but even just people leveraging AI for like things like disinformation and things like that, right? That's already happening. And take for example, yourself. You've got a podcast. Your voice is on public record, and there's lots of record of your voice. The technology is already there for them to take, and someone to mimic your voice, and make you say things that you don't actually say. The threat of bad actors utilizing AI is there. So that's that's already quite scary, and it's a challenge that's only going to become more apparent, I think.
I think that should be the focus. We're seeing a lot of within the United States, within our government, Congress, the House of Representatives, there's a lot of talk about how do we regulate AI so that this doesn't happen. And I am under the theory that anytime at least the U.S. government gets their hands on something and regulates it, it turns poorly for the regular people. And so I've been trying to tell people, I don't think we need to regulate it or sanction it. What we need to be doing is leveraging how to counter it. You wouldn't say, oh, hey, we've got this terrorism problem. Well, how do we regulate that? That's not what you would say. You would say, how do you counter that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that's on the horizon, and that's something that was outlined in recent documents that were released here in New Zealand. But also, if we go back to the replacement of the human by AI in the intelligence community. So we talked about the analyst. I don't think the analyst is going to get replaced anytime soon. Their job will just be made more efficient. There'll be probably a better analyst for it, because they have these quite powerful tools. But then if we go back before the analyst, if we go to the collector, I think there's still the role of at least the human collector in the intelligence community. Probably things like signals as well. There's always going to be a human element for intelligence collection. I don't think there's two ways about that. So there's that, and if we're going to use AI collection, I think that'll be more the world of OSINT. But things SIGINT, ELINT, human, I think there's still a massive human factor for that.
Yeah, I think we found out, especially when we shut everything down for COVID. There was a conversation of, are we going to ever be comfortable being face-to-face again? I think what we learned in that experiment was we have a desire as humans to be face-to-face.
Yeah.
Even you and I, we're virtual right now. We can see each other's faces. Yeah. But there's something to be said if we were in the same room.
Yeah.
The conversation could be different.
Yeah.
And humans need that. They need that physical presence.
Yeah. Absolutely. And even, I just can't see, like, even you're working in an austere environment, right? Take the Middle East, Middle East, for example, that's, to me, that's not a AI environment. That's cutting around on the ground,
Yeah.
leveraging sources, handling sources, things like that. Yeah. So there's a space for AI. It's certainly it's all about efficiency gains for me at the moment, especially as an end user in the public domain. Don't know what's going on behind the scenes in the governments and national security and things like that. But yeah, efficiency gains is where we're currently at, but there is potential for it to quickly devolve into some bad things if we let it.
Yeah, definitely could devolve into sort of an evil, I would say, if we allow it to get. If we allow the certain people to get involved that have evil intents, and they can try.
Are you using?
I do. The way I use it is to summarize things, like I was talking about. I will take big. So Bard, the Google the Google AI bot, does a really good job of scraping. It has that plugin already within it to scrape everything. So, like, what I will probably do is the U.S. just put out their national intelligence strategy for 2023.
Nice.
So I can send that entire document to Bard. It already has it because it scrapes everything.
Yeah.
And just, instead of having to read 100-something pages, of the national intelligence strategy, I can now get a summary within 2,500 words of what's in there and the key points of it. So that's how I'm trying to use it.
Yeah, that's that's how I use it as well, especially for Orcon and that stuff. It's summarizing its key points, because especially if you're doing these big policy documents, they use 100 pages to say a couple pages worth of good stuff.
Yeah, so it's like, for us as Intel analysts, you can kind of get that summary and it's great.
Yeah.
It won't. I agree with you. It's not going to take the jobs away. I don't know if it ever will, but I just don't know the future. But the type of person that the job is being taken away from, and something that I'm interested in seeing what the future is going to look like, is in the legal realm, where you have these sort of paralegals, and all that they do is read and summarize. Well, now your paralegal could be ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And at least in the United States, within our legal system, something that lawyers try to leverage is this sort of massive document dump the day before trial starts. And that's to overwhelm the lawyers and, have them maybe miss out on some key issues that are in there. I think it's very beneficial in the legal system to hopefully in the future not have that happen, where lawyers are trying to leverage these data dumps. Because you do a data dump the day before, in about 35 seconds to 2 minutes, I'm going to have every key point that's within these documents.
Yeah.
And so, that might take the job away from a paralegal, but it's also, like we've discussed on how AI just can't take away from verification. So even in that aspect, it could scrape all the data from the entire document dump and get things wrong or miss out on key aspects. So there's this sort of, you've got to understand it and use it correctly. Yeah. Or else you're going to fail at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that legal aspect's really interesting. I actually used it. It's not in an intelligence context, but I needed to understand some legislation for this work I was doing around my house. So I just plugged in and said, ChatGPT, ask it some questions, and it perfectly summarized and answered the question that I needed, and it saved me having to go through or even consult with a public lawyer. That's like, it's pretty good. That's probably why there's so much hang up across agencies at the moment. I'm pretty sure the hang ups are always with legal. Maybe they.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, lawyers are there going. They're like, how do I keep my job? Let's write this out. Yeah. Well, we can move the kind of just a few more. I'll only take a few more minutes of your time.
That's all right.
But I do want to get your assessment on New Zealand's current strategy within the Indo-Pacific. I know that they're boosting defense spending. If you just want to give a quick assessment on what you're
Yeah.
seeing, what you like, if you can say what you don't like. If you can't, I'll talk to you offline. You can tell me then.
No. So yeah, I'll quickly talk to the recent documents that released. So up until this point, New Zealand, we didn't have a national security strategy. We had a national security system. And apologies for anyone who's listening and if I butcher this, but from the reading that I did and my understanding, the national security system was just a conceptual framework that if something were to happen, a national security incident, a bunch of agencies will come together underneath what's called ODESK. I forget what the acronym actually means, but it's called ODESK. And all the heads would come together, come up with a formulated plan, and then the plan would be enacted. It didn't really determine or specify how different agencies should be working together. So there was a lot of, when things did happen, there was a lot of cultural barriers, there were a lot of technical barriers and, cross-agency misunderstanding. So it wasn't very efficient. And I think, we've had a few instances where that was proven, both in a national security context and with natural disasters and things like that. So that was one of the lessons learned. So this year they've come out and published the National Security Strategy, first of its kind. And the big thing behind this is bringing the national security conversation out into the public, because I think even socially and culturally in New Zealand, national security really isn't at the forefront of people's minds. If we liken it to the United States, I think there's more of a public awareness towards national security, whereas in New Zealand, it's not on people's radar. At least the general public. But the whole,
Do you have an idea of why that is?
It's just this is my opinion. So my opinion is just because of our isolation in the world, our strategic isolation. We've been quite insulated from a lot of the things that have happened around the world. And it's only until recent years where it's become more realized, where a lot of even violent extremism has been brought to New Zealand. And it's always existed in New Zealand. It's just never been made very public because it's been very isolated and low level. But then when we had the spectacular attack on March 15th in Christchurch, the shooting of the mosques,
right,
that's when it became really apparent. And since then we've had Islamic extremism, some isolated things there. And then that's not even to mention things like climate change and impacts from that. We've got more extreme weather events which are adversely impacting communities. And so it's just decades of being isolated and insulated from the world. But now with the world becoming more globalized, now we have to start bringing this conversation to the forefront and make people more aware, increase public perception and things like that. So we've got a strategy, which is cool. As part of the strategy, there's been another document released, which was the first unclassified threat assessment, which has our New Zealand Security Intelligence Service actually coming forward and saying these are the threats to New Zealand in the public domain, rather than saying in the past it's been quite ambiguous. Like, okay, yeah, there's great power competition, blah, blah, blah. But now, they've gone and they've specified, okay, well, we've got foreign interference in New Zealand from China, Russia, and Iran, foreign interference in the form of political, economic coercion, things like that. Violent extremism is still in New Zealand. It's still, although the threat is low, it's assessed as realistic possibility, but there are still elements of that in New Zealand. And then there's the threat, or the impacts of climate change and things like that. So the key one for me to fall out of that, which is fed into the defence policy and where New Zealand's military is headed, is the realism over China, right? So realizing that China is a major a major driver of geopolitical change in the Indo-Pacific, the assertiveness and the willingness for China to try and bend the will in the Pacific to a different rules-based order. So yeah, that was the biggest thing, and that certainly influenced where the defence force wants to head, or the military wants to head.
All right. So that sounds just like a lot like what I'm pretty sure I'm going to read in the National Intelligence Strategy for the U.S. It's the great powers, and then China, Russia, that kind of thing. So I'll ask just a real quick assessment on if somebody says, well, Taiwan is part of China, because all this starts off because there is this analysis that China will reunify Taiwan into China. So if they do that, what would you tell someone, a New Zealander, a Kiwi, who may not be worried, and say, but that's just Taiwan. They were always China. They should have been China. Why should we be worried about that?
Well, then, yeah, because you got China, Taiwan. Cool. Well, let's zoom out. Let's talk about who Taiwan engages with, who the partners are. Okay, well, one of those is the US. Okay, so,
right.
Well, who's one of our, who's the US major partners in the Indo-Pacific? Okay, well, it's Australia. Okay, they're the major ally. And who's New Zealand's only ally? Okay, it's Australia. So,
right.
The interconnectedness is there. And should China, Taiwan be the catalyst for a major conflict that draws in other powers, unfortunately, New Zealand is likely to be drawn into that, regardless of trade, regardless of our relationships with China and things like that. New Zealand's going to be drawn into it in one way or the other, purely because of our treaties and our ally with Australia. So, but I think in that respect, I think people are waking up to that fact. Especially the point is Australia is our only ally. The US is a partner, but Australia is an ally. So I'd like to think where Australia goes, we go. And the way the military is shaping, we are looking, my take on it is that there's going to be, essentially we're forming a big unit that will just integrate easily into the Aussie Defence Force, whether that's a motorised brigade or something. But everything is shaping to integration to the Aussies. Should Aussie go to war alongside the US, I'm almost certain that would be part of that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful, perfect, beautiful breakdown. I agree with everything that you said just there. And I think that just gives the listeners a view of how the intelligence analyst mind works. And it's like, yeah, we're focused in on this one thing, but let's kind of scan out and see what's going on around it to understand the why of what's important on that focused in level.
Yeah, and I will caveat that with there is nuance to that, and there are many different factors that can influence that. But if we're looking at it in simplistic terms, who we're partnered with militarily, who our allies are, and I don't want to sound alarmist or make hyperbolic statements or anything like that, but in simple terms, that's a likely scenario.
Right. Well, Cole, thank you so much for coming on. I want to give you as much time as you need just to let everybody know what you're doing now, where they can find you, and how they can get in touch with you if they need to.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at allcon.intel. You can find me there. Also, and via Instagram, you can pretty much find the links for everything else. But for my website, it's allconintel.com. So Allcon is spelled ALCON, intel.com. And what I'm doing there, I'm providing free services at the moment just to get my name out there and provide free content. Keen to prove my value. So if you're interested in geopolitical or intelligence-backed content with some insightful insights behind that, then please get in touch. Just flick me an email, info@allconintel.com.
Awesome. Yeah, get in now while it's free, because this guy's not going to be free for long. It's good information. I love it. I respect you a lot, Cole. Once again, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. I always love coming on to your podcast and even just talking to you in general. It's always a good time.